Hey everyone, Keeping Receipts crew, we're coming back at you. It's been a while. My name is Doug. I'm here with my colleague Chris. How's it going, Chris?
Not too bad, Doug. How you doing, buddy?
Good, thanks. And yeah, we're here to, I guess, advocate for the fan experience on a number of topics, really. Last time we kind of dug into some calls, some challenges, some I guess, calls that we felt didn't go the way they should have gone. We questioned them. We dug into some highlights. And this time we're going to have more of a discourse or dialogue about kind of a broader range, more broad range of topics. More specifically, like the regular season and whether or not we think the fan experience is really what it should be at this point in time. And also, we're going to talk about maybe a new structure that might be needed. There's some ideas that we can float around uh, to make the fan experience better. I mean, we're talking about 162 games with baseball, 82 games with the NBA and the NHL. And is the regular season the experience that it was growing up? I think it's definitely not. I mean, from my perspective, it's changed so much. So we're going to dig into that and then talk about possibly the playoff structure and whether that system is too long and what the point is really of the initial stages of the playoffs. I know in baseball it's the wild card round, and the NBA kind of has the play in round, right? And
hmm
realistically, do those teams have a chance? And are the best teams given a fair shake? You know, in baseball, we've had a few seasons where teams win well in excess of 100 games, and then, you know, they get knocked out in a 5 game divisional round. And is that
hmm
the way that it should be? I'm not sure. So we can brainstorm some ideas that
hmm
might be a better system. I'm sure
Yeah.
they've talked about this in MLB and NBA boardrooms, but
hmm
we're hoping to be, one of the voices of the fan perspective. And I think that Chris, as a NBA season ticket holder with the Raptors, and I've been a lifelong Jays fan. I've worked for a period of time with the Jays. I've seen the atmosphere there and how things work. Um, it's we're just going to get a read of the room essentially and see how things are going in the regular season
Yeah.
from our perspective. So, what do you think, Chris?
Well, I think
Um,
there's a reason we're talking about this today, and it's because I think the general consensus is like we've seen changes in MLB and NBA over the last couple of years to them tweaking with the play-in format with the NBA and also MLB adding some wild card teams to the mix. So we're talking about this because frankly, fans of all the sports felt like something needed to be done. So I guess now we're just sort of observing after a couple of years of the minor tweaks, and as fans of both of these leagues, I guess discussing how we feel about the changes. I got to be honest with you, Doug. Especially we see this year, the NBA needed to do something, and it seemed like without anyone being able to, break out the crystal ball and really predict the future, I think the NBA kind of pulled some of the right levers. I think what we wanted to see is um, more teams staying competitive and less teams trying to tank in the NBA. So now you
mhm.
see, for instance, in the NBA, both in the Eastern and Western Conference, more so in the Eastern Conference, the play-in races are really tight. The last two spots, spots 5 and 6, that are playoff round guaranteed. You don't go through the play-in. There's a real premium on that, so you see
Yeah,
some of those middle teams really working hard to get in. And then, of course, with the Jays run, we were lucky enough to have a competitive team last year that came down to the final game. And frankly, for me, I did find it to be. Um, I do find that these leagues may be onto something. Not to say that more tweaks aren't coming down the road, but I think they had to do something. And for the most part, I think so far it's working. How do you
yeah.
feel about that in MLB and NBA in particular?
Well, I'm very much a stats guy. I love compiling and comparing, the record book and see if guys can chase. Every year, there's always a chase for a certain record or
hmm
a certain accolade in MLB, right?
Yeah.
And like Aaron Judge a couple of years ago, he broke the regular season home run record. I mean, post PED era home run
Hmm.
record. I suppose Bonds
Hmm.
officially broke it with 73 home runs in the early 2000s, but of
Hmm.
course that record is tainted. So when Judge surpassed that number with 62,
Hmm.
it's awesome. And there's the RBI record. I think that's somewhere around like 190, if I'm not mistaken. I think Hack Wilson has that. So
Hmm.
my degrees in history. I'm very much a historian, and
Hmm.
baseball is very much intertwined with American history, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I think that maybe they can't, or adjusting the length of the regular season might be a challenge for
yeah.
MLB. Will be a challenge for
Just,
MLB.
just you're thinking it's a challenge just based on those historic stats and how
Exactly,
things look in the
exactly. I
forward
think
sense. Yeah.
stats and history are so
Hmm.
connected to the soul of the game.
Right. Now, just
Uh,
to interject on that thought, Doug, the NBA is quite different because I find, for instance, in MLB, where it's a total home run for the season number, that's sort of one of the pinnacles of baseball.
mhm.
I don't think basketball quite has that. It's not. We're not looking at, oh, who's going to break the records for most points scored in a single season or most blocks in a single season. Let's say in basketball, the stats are a little bit slanted more towards single game accomplishments or like season averages, right? So a little
Yeah.
bit of a difference there between the two leagues.
Well, yeah, like when LeBron had the all-time point scoring record, when that was broken, which was this season, right?
Last season, last
It
season.
was last. Yeah, that's right. It was
Yeah.
last season. I would have thought that would be absolute front page news everywhere in the sports world, and I guess it was maybe for a day or two.
Mhm.
But certainly in baseball, if a record of that magnitude was coming up, it
Yeah.
would be like the main discourse for weeks leading up to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you would hear about it, the year before, maybe a couple of years before
Yeah.
uh, that person was approaching that record. But
Yeah.
the NBA, it's a huge record, but it just kind of goes to show that maybe those types of accolades aren't quite as important in basketball as they are
Oh,
in
definitely not.
baseball.
You know,
Yeah,
you're more of a baseball fan than I am, but going back to something you said about the tainted Barry Bonds record, I watched that season for the record, and I remember tuning in and seeing a lot of Barry Bonds' home runs and being quite impressed, by the way, regardless of what you think about, the PED stuff.
no,
Yeah, I remember just watching and sort of being impressed and looking forward to the next game just based on those home runs, right? So, another thing we saw in the NBA is that competitiveness was drying up, and the NBA was having a real problem with, stars resting. And to go on
yeah,
the stat topic, it relates because the same thing, I think in MLB, guys want to stay on the field to get these sort of, home run numbers. They want to see
there's
those
benchmark
totals for the
numbers. I think the
season.
benchmark numbers have a lot more, definitely carry a lot more weight.
Right. So what I'm thinking is a guy in late September, even if his team is out of the playoffs completely or comfortably in the playoffs, if there's a player whose knee is bothering him, for instance, MLB, and he's sitting on 28 home runs, I can expect that guy to try and get out there to get those last two home runs just to have 30 on the
Absolutely.
resume
Yeah,
versus NBA. And you see now that's the discourse with the league is that they're really struggling to keep these guys playing because this load management, there's some kind of science behind it. Some people think it's kind of the way to go to maximize performance in the playoffs. Um, but yeah, the NBA is having a real problem. That's even the discord now is the 65 games talk. Able to get to 65 games to get to the accolades. And, it's anecdotal, but you talk to the young kids and they could care less about 65 games. If someone goes on a heater and only plays 40, that a lot of the young kids want that guy to be the NBA, the MVP of the league, so to speak. It's more so the traditionalists that are looking at this 65 game rule and thinking it means something.
yeah.
I guess it's the old men in us, Doug. You were saying MLB is a traditionalist sport. They don't want to change the number of games just so they don't have two different sets of stat books, right? So,
Sure.
mhm.
Well, that concept of load management is certainly resonating in MLB now more than ever.
Yeah,
Uh, and some of those benchmark numbers aren't really, they don't exist to the same extent now as they did in the 90s, even in the early 2000s, in the
right.
80s.
Yeah.
You're not going to see a pitcher aim for
300 in.
20
Yeah.
wins.
Yeah.
200 innings might be a benchmark now, but I mean, we used to
Yeah.
see guys easily surpass 250 innings
Right.
in
Well,
the 80s.
what was the pitcher's stat when we were young? Was 300 wins, right? That was something that all the pitchers
That
were.
was, yeah, that was the guaranteed ticket for first ballot Hall of Fame was
Right. And
300
so,
wins.
what's the last pitcher we've had that has 300 wins?
The
Have we had
last
it?
pitcher would have been, I believe, Greg Maddux was the last one to get 300 wins,
Oh
or
boy,
Tom Glavine, one or the
Glavine.
other.
I think. Yeah, I think it was Glavine, and then I feel like CC Sabathia and our guy Doc Holliday got pretty close, but I think those were the last
Well,
guys to even
no,
come
no,
close, right?
Halliday was in the low 200 wins,
Okay.
and
Okay.
Sabathia was somewhere in the mid 200s. I can't remember the
Hmm.
exact number,
Hmm.
but now the concept of 300 wins is completely far fetched. Like no one is ever going to hit that number
Right.
again, at
Like I'm
least not with
thinking
the
about
system.
the best pitchers of our generation that I can think of. Again, not being the biggest baseball fan, but I'm thinking Kershaw and Verlander. What are their numbers like? Are they even
Well,
close?
Kershaw just retired,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he was, I believe, he was around 220 wins.
Okay.
Scherzer is at 222. I think he just got his 222nd
Okay.
to start the season this year with the Jays.
Hmm.
And Verlander is up around 250, or 260, I believe. But he's
Wow.
not going to hit 300 wins. There's
Wow.
no way.
So it
He'll
shows the
need,
difference, right?
yeah,
Verlander's had so many good seasons. He's been so durable for so long, and I'm kind of shocked he doesn't have those 300, right? But
yeah. Well, now that like they pull guys after a quality start is considered 5, 6 innings,
hmm.
right? So
Right.
if you're pulling a guy out that early, the chances of him getting the win is that much less. So
Hmm.
even the guys who are throwing close to 200 innings or 180 plus, 180 is about the benchmark for a really solid season,
Hmm.
maybe even 170. Uh, they might get 12 wins, 13 wins.
Right.
So I think there were only two guys last year, Scooble in the AL, and I can't remember who in the NL, but only two guys had like 15 or 16 wins last year. So
Wow.
the
Yeah.
idea of a guy reaching 300 wins nowadays
Yeah.
with load management is minimal. I just don't think it's ever going to happen again. Now the benchmark for a Hall of Fame pitcher, it's kind of shifted to strikeouts, and they've attributed durability to strikeout totals. And if a guy reaches 3,000 strikeouts, that's now considered the automatic ticket to the Hall of Fame.
Right. Okay. So you were
So,
talking a little bit about load management being a little bit of a problem in baseball. Do you have some examples that you're thinking of?
yeah, I mean, like if you have a team that has depth or that is stacked, and you've got a guy that's got a huge contract, uh, the first one that comes to mind is Blake Snell, right? I mean, it seemed like last year he only pitched for the playoffs, and you saw how effective he was in, I believe, the divisional series, and then the NLCS, and in the World Series as well. Like he was absolutely lights out,
Hmm.
and he was like that, during the stretch, like the later months of September
Hmm.
towards the end of the season, and it
Right.
just raises the question, like, where were you all year?
Right.
And they weren't really clear with the injury that he had. It was like arm fatigue. It was like impingement. There was no
Hmm.
real diagnosis, but they kind
Hmm.
of kept him away from the scene while the Dodgers were floating, 5, 6 games up in first place.
Hmm.
And they would pitch other guys, but then they would keep Snell uh, until when it mattered, it seemed. And the same thing seems to be happening this year with him. And there's other pitchers where they don't really disclose the full diagnosis of exactly what's going on, just vague terms like impingement or arm fatigue
So,
or
in your opinion, does it seem like it's being effective? This use of load management? Do you think it's going to motivate other teams to try and do it as well, or?
yeah, I mean, if the team has the depth,
Mhm.
then I guess that works, but it's kind of robbing the fans of the regular season experience, right? From
Absolutely.
the
Well,
fans' perspective, I mean, I want to see Blake Snell pitch.
absolutely.
And
Well, and I mean, this goes to our initial point. As a season ticket holder, I can't tell you how many times I'm disappointed to go watch a game where one of the stars from the opposing team has rest. This is a big, big problem in the NBA.
yeah,
Um,
and,
and
yeah,
I would argue that we have some evidence that maybe load management isn't even the tool that people expect. I mean, of course, last year we had a rash of some pretty severe injuries that looked like maybe it was from overuse. For instance, Tatum and Lillard and, memorably Halliburton in Game 7 of the NBA Finals all went down with a torn Achilles
Mhm.
that a lot of people attribute to calf strains that weren't rested properly.
Mhm.
So that's some of the talk out there. So of course we saw a lot of that, but then again we see a player like Kawhi Leonard. That in 2019 here in Toronto, load management seemed to be the secret ingredient that helped him tick and give us such an amazing run to that finals that we all remember. But you see, in the LA for the Clippers, they've been trying load management for the past couple of years, and I mean, we've seen Kawhi in the middle.
With George and Leonard, right?
That's right. So
Yeah.
we've seen Kawhi in the middle of playoff series where they really babied him go down with injuries that, I mean, maybe they're not related to load management or fatigue, but it still maybe wasn't as effective, wasn't as useful. Whereas now Kawhi Leonard is having arguably one of his best seasons in a year where the Clippers absolutely need him, and he's playing more minutes. And
Yeah.
he did have a good showing at the All-Star game, and he is top 10 in league MVP voting. And they sort of can't afford to baby him as a franchise now. Set aside that whole fiasco about getting paid under the salary cap. That's that's for another
Mhm.
show. But yeah,
But if he
so
goes down, if Kawhi goes down from an injury, then the Clippers are done, in effect,
right,
right?
right. But at the same time, you hear again anecdotal stories. Karl Malone and John Stockton, who played like 20 years, and I think they missed like 5 games between them in their 20-year career, which is kind of
That's right.
amazing.
That's
Yeah,
true.
Kevin Garnett talks about this too. That Kevin Garnett said playing heavy minutes is what keeps you in game shape,
Hmm.
not load management.
Yeah,
Uh,
and you
you
would
know?
think like as a guy in his late 40s, which I am, the stops and starts from basketball. I mean, if I were to play basketball, I would need load management, right? Because
Right.
it's killer on the knees and
Yeah, heavy impact. Yeah.
yeah, and so forth. So I'm just looking at yeah, the
Mhm.
effect that basketball has on the body. It's probably more taxing
Mhm.
than but I guess all professional sports are super taxing on the body,
Right.
right? Like these guys go super hard and
Right.
yeah. So
Well,
that's
and in a way, this is not just a sport of skill and talent, but a sport of availability and attrition.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
maybe the person that deserves it is the person that could physically endure the challenge. Maybe that's part of what we're watching here.
It's
Uh,
true. It's true.
it
But I think, I mean, in baseball, if one of the stars or even the franchise player goes down, I mean, a team can still sustain throughout a period of time. I mean, I'm thinking
Right,
of the Jays last year
right,
down the stretch when they absolutely needed Bo Bichette in the lineup. They were able to insert someone else.
right, and it
And
worked
just the
out for
depth
them.
that they had, they
Mhm.
were arguably even a better team in the playoffs
Right.
without Bichette in the lineup so they could step up. But that's not the case in basketball. I mean,
No.
realistically, if a
Yeah.
franchise player goes down, they might be okay for a game here, a game there, but ultimately they're not going to hit that same playoff objective without that
That's
franchise
right.
player, right?
And it can really alter a franchise. And to go back to this discussion about um, watchability during the regular season, the reason the playoffs are so exciting is because everyone's putting their best foot forward. Everyone, they know it's do or die. There
Mm-hmm.
is no tomorrow, so to speak. So you're seeing really the best product.
Yeah,
Um, and
absolutely.
and I think, we just touched on it. We're empathetic to these guys that it's a lot of impact, it's a lot of wear and tear. But essentially, the league, I think, needs to figure out that balance between, giving the fans a good product, as you're talking about, and giving the fans value for what they're paying for, because these sports are no longer cheap. Even if you're sitting at home and buying the cable package, it's not cheap, right? So
Yeah,
um,
for sure.
the fans are they kind of need the value, but at the same time, as a business, you understand these teams where the ultimate success is winning the championship. You absolutely understand their motivations for trying to get every angle to help them get there, right?
Yeah, but there's also the player obligation part of it, right? I mean, even the league minimum in the NBA is, I think, 1.2 million. That's the
Hmm.
low end salary across 82 regular season games. In MLB, it's 740,000, which is,
Wow.
I think that's the lowest of the four major sports.
Hmm.
The NHL, the NBA, the NFL, they're all higher than MLB in terms of the floor. And
Yeah.
that's something that I think the MLBPA is going to address in the next rounds of collective bargaining, which comes at the end of this season.
Hmm.
Because the minimum, uh, what the minimum salary for MLB players is far too low when you consider 162 games,
Hmm.
right? So given that, I would say they're entitled to load management.
Right.
Whereas the NBA, 1.1 million, 1.2 million as the lowest salary, the entry salary, they should
Hmm.
play every game. Those
Yes.
rookies, those first year guys, second, third year guys,
Hmm.
they're getting paid decent money. Plus, in many cases, a signing bonus
Right.
that's in excess of in the range of 8 to 10 million.
Right. I
So,
had to fact check you, Doug, and you are right about the 1.1.
yeah,
But that is for players that have signed a full contract. Any player on a two-way can actually be lower. So that's 50% of the rookie minimum. So it could be as low as 550,000. But I do
okay,
hear what you're saying, especially for the travel and the schedule. That's considerably more.
yeah,
Um, One thing that I would argue, though, is that in baseball, you might get like a relief pitcher, for instance, that doesn't pitch every game that is out there for a shorter amount of time. But
yeah. Well,
again, it's impossible to quantify like from one sport to the other, like the value,
the
right?
relief pitchers will lead. In many cases, will be among the league leaders in appearances as far as pitchers go. Right.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Sometimes
right,
they'll have to go back to back days. Sometimes in a
right,
series, they're pitching every game.
right. Even if they're only
Right.
throwing like 5 pitches in an outing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I would argue that the relief pitchers are actually the workhorses who
Yes.
are who are underappreciated. They're kind of under the radar.
Yes.
Right.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
they'll hover around that league minimum salary wise and maybe
Hmm.
cap out at 3-4 million a year, and they won't be in excess of that. But their value to the team is huge because they're out
Yeah.
there for so many games.
Right. Right.
But
All
I
right.
think
So.
that's a good segue. That's a good segue to our second point because
Mhm.
the NBA has introduced the Emirates Cup
Yeah.
that seems to have reignited a fan base. I think with the New York Knicks, they won it this year,
Yeah.
and they've been without a championship since who knows when, as
That's
far as
right.
an NBA championship goes. But they were able to hoist a trophy this year, and
Hmm.
that was as champions of the Emirates NBA Cup.
Yeah.
Now, I believe there's a bonus incentive for everyone on the team when they win that, and it's somewhere in the range of 500,000. So that's enough for the guys on the lower end of the payroll to really go after, right? And
Absolutely. And
some
what
of the
they.
games were, some of the games were highlighted in the schedule in tournament format,
That's right.
and those games were of higher importance. It kind of gave some meaning early in the season to
Right.
regular season games.
Right. A
So,
little
I
bit.
mean, how do you feel that that's in sort of added something more to the fan experience as a
Yeah,
season ticket holder? Yeah.
absolutely. You nailed it. It's like we sort of, in the case of New York, they hadn't won anything for a while. They have no bragging rights for
Mhm.
anything. So it adds a little bit of juju at the beginning of the season, which the league really, really desperately needed, right? They needed teams to sort of take the beginning of the season more seriously.
Mhm.
Um, and it allowed some of those fringe teams to have something to play for. Maybe you upset, maybe you catch a team better than you that has a couple of injuries and you win one or two of those first couple of games. And then even a team that's not playoff bound might feel that motivation and that extra drive. You mentioned the money they win, and it's sort of been talked about that it's not the high end guys that are looking forward to the 500,000, but the high end guys really want to make that extra money for those guys making the league minimum,
They
right?
want to take care of their guys, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that, as brothers on a team, when you see a guy on a two-way that makes $500,000, and then all of a sudden you doubled his annual salary,
Yeah.
like feels good for the whole team, gives your team bragging rights. It kind of sharpens the focus, which a lot of head coaches are looking for. You know, like the season gets mundane, so you sort of want a reason to get your team engaged early and focus on a sort of prize. And then, you know, as someone, I'm a casual soccer fan. I don't watch a lot of soccer. But I remember when I was a kid thinking, whoa, so cool. Like you have all these opportunities to win this championship and this championship, you know, kind of reminded me when I was a kid and you were watching wrestling, and maybe it wasn't the world heavyweight champ, but the intercontinental champ, you know, you had these
Yeah,
other little
I think
things.
Randy Macho Man Savage held
There
that for a
you
period
there
of
you
time, right?
go. Yeah, when he won the intercontinental belt, it's not the
Yeah,
top tier, but it's something that you could be proud of, right? So
exactly. It's a good
uh,
consolation prize.
yeah, so as an older fan, I might, you know, I know a lot of older fans, whatever, they don't get excited. But again, for the younger crowd, I think that's sort of those little accolades. And I mean, why not? What's the harm? It hasn't
Yeah,
really affected negatively anything, I don't think.
yeah.
It hasn't seemed to get boring for now. And actually, this year we had some interesting drama because, you know, if you look back, OKC was on a historic run to start the season. They looked like they might have beat the Bulls' win streak. But then the Spurs came into that tournament and they looked really fierce. And it looked like that was their chance before anything happens in the playoffs for them to sort of make a run at OKC. And then one of the best games we had in the season was the semifinal on the west side, or the final on the west side was OKC versus San Antonio. San Antonio ended up winning by 2 in a thrilling game, one of the best of the season. And so, yeah, it gave us that drama that was super compelling. And then again, everyone thought that it was the Spurs to win. And when New York came out and beat the Spurs after their great win against OKC, it sort of gave New York fans a reason to sort of puff their chest out and to say like, okay, we're on this level. We can play these guys, right? So I definitely think, you know, maybe fans in Indiana didn't care. Maybe they didn't tune in. But even as a Raptor fan, we made it to the Eastern Final against New York. And I know we were all disappointed after the game, but going into that game, there was some extra, you know, some extra fervor in the city and people were excited.
Definitely.
So yeah, it did work. I'm just wondering, what's your thoughts? Do you think MLB can sort of implement the same sort of thing, or?
I think they could, and for the same reason with that incentive, the financial incentive,
Mm-hmm.
and the guys on the higher salary range taking care of the guys on the lower end, I think that
Yeah,
would be a huge incentive.
yeah,
And yeah, it would have to take place probably, I would think, during the All-Star break.
right,
And they could still have the home run derby and the skills competition and the futures game and so forth
right,
on day one of the All-Star break. And on day two, as I would see it, they would have the final of that MLB Cup,
yeah,
right? So it would give lots of meaning, a lot more meaning to the
right,
first half of the season, because that's when you see, you know, stadiums with crowds below 10,000.
right,
And, you know, on any given night, you could have between, you know, under 5,000 in some cases
right,
for teams that are just absolutely out of contention.
right.
So if there were some more skin in the game and
Mm-hmm.
fans were aware of where their team is positioned in terms of the tournament bracket,
Yeah.
I think that would bring in a lot more interest. It would bring in a lot more press.
Mm-hmm.
And in turn, more people would come out to the park.
Right.
You know, and
Yeah.
as I was saying before, as a stats guy with baseball, like I would be aware of where my team is sitting and, you know, who they could potentially play in the bracket. You know, I'd be aware of that. It would be cool. You know,
Mm.
I'd probably have the bracket up on display somewhere here in the office to see how my team's doing, you know, similar to
Right.
how March Madness took place, but over a longer period of time.
Right.
Uh, so
Well,
it
I know.
was it.
I know.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
I know you're mentioning over the All-Star break, but what do you feel about if MLB tried to implement this during the regular season, sort of an in-season tournament? You know, even if you had sort of an NL regular season tournament champion and an AL, do you think that would sort of add to the experience that fans would get, that sort of title, if you could hang that banner in your
Well,
stadium?
somehow the regular season would still exist as it currently does,
Right.
but there would be a tournament structure that would be embedded into the regular season.
Right, just like the Emirates Cups in the
Yeah,
NBA.
exactly. And then the final game, so the
Mhm.
last two teams standing, would play during the All-Star break
Right,
on that second day in place of the All-Star game.
right. So
And
I
then
gotta tell you,
you'd still have like players named as like first and second team and third team, similar to what the NBA does,
right. I gotta
because you don't
tell
want to
you,
take. Go ahead.
I think
Yeah.
one of the ideas that I've heard, not really in the mainstream, but I've heard a couple people float this, and I absolutely love this idea. I hope it's sort of the next level of this with the Emirates Cup, is to sort of follow the soccer model where you can then have international tournaments based off of this in season tournament. So,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, in the NBA, I would like it if the Turkish league and the Spanish league and the whole Euro League had their own tournament style, where
Mm-hmm.
then they had winners that they could enter into, an international tournament that happens every season for the sport. For instance, the Knicks would play Barcelona if they were the
Yeah.
ones that were to win Eurobasket.
Right.
Um, and then again, it just adds another level. I don't know if
It,
MLB could do that with the Japanese or the Korean leagues or the Venezuelan leagues, but
yeah, perhaps. But I mean, you're talking about the Japanese league. The NPB is probably around a AAA level.
yeah,
So I don't know that they'd be able to compete directly with MLB teams. But I mean,
right,
it's a thought. It's something worth considering, definitely.
yes,
But I think the main attraction for a tournament would be, you could have in the final the Yankees versus the Red Sox
yes,
potentially, right?
yes,
You don't have like it's all encompassing MLB.
yes,
It wouldn't be National League, American League. It would just be one big tournament bracket with two teams meeting in
right,
the final at the end of it. I would love to see that. I think it'd be super entertaining.
right,
Yeah, and it would give the fan base something to cheer for or something to focus on in the early months of the season, because
right,
that's a short window from when the season begins now in March. I can't believe I'm saying that, but
yes,
MLB season now begins in March. But it would give something for fans to focus on between March and the end of June, in effect. Right?
absolutely.
It's a shorter
And,
window.
and Doug, I have a theory that if the MLB were to do an early season tournament, the team that would win that would very rarely be the best team at the end of the season.
That's right.
Because
That's
when I
right.
watch baseball, what I see at the end of May and the team that I see that's rolling and super hot, I can almost 9 times out of 10 say this is not the team that's going to be rolling and super hot at the end of September, right? So baseball's a
Yeah.
long, long season. I do feel like something at the beginning of the season might be exciting.
Yeah. Cool.
Mhm.
Well, I mean that the WBC was super awesome. I thought that was exciting. It was like
Right.
watching an all-star game
Mm-hmm.
every night. So they do have that, but that's only every few years that rolls around, right? So a
Right.
tournament format, I think, well, why not? Like, give it a try.
Right.
They've tinkered. MLB has tinkered with the All Star game and having it mean more. Like if the AL wins, they
Mm-hmm.
get home field advantage in the World Series. I was not supportive of that, but
Mm-hmm.
they had that for a few years there. I think they've abandoned that idea now because
Do you want to talk for a minute about the NBA All-Star game?
sure,
Yeah. So I think the NBA nailed it this year. It was kind of
Mhm.
surprising. No one was really too excited because the NBA All-Star Game has really suffered in the last couple of years. Viewership is down, and it's not interesting. It didn't really mean anything.
Mhm.
Um, and then a lot of people give Victor Wembanyama credit, but what the NBA went to this year was reducing the number of teams. Um, and I think they went to 3 teams. Yeah, they did. They had a world team and 2 USA teams. But
Mhm.
I feel like they could even break it down more. And then what we ended up seeing is that when it's 2 teams, kind of people just take it as a celebrity event. You're just there for photos and pictures. When it became sort of a mini tournament style for bragging rights amongst select players,
Mhm.
especially in the NBA, all of a sudden they had a lot of juice. Victor Wembanyama was really mad when his team lost that first game, and everyone in the building saw that and thought, "Whoa, this is cool! Like we're excited now." And it was the younger NBA USA team that ended up winning.
Mhm.
Um, but you could see that it really mattered to everyone all of a sudden when they realized that at the end of the day, the small group that came out as the winners were going to have those bragging rights over their fellow all-stars, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like that little bit of division really helped. And, I've heard some people say, hey, in the NBA, let's go to 12 teams of 3 players each, maybe 4. You get 3-on-3 with a sub, which would be amazing. Now, I do understand you could never do that in MLB, but do you see maybe adding more people to the All-Star game and then having 4 teams that kind of play tournament style? Do you think the MLB can replicate that? Because like I said, the NBA was in trouble and they may be onto something. I think this year's All-Star game was a big, big, pleasant surprise for the NBA. And maybe the MLB might copy them and be able to find that success.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like the rosters for the All-Star game as it stands they're pretty long and extensive, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of guys that they bring in for the All-Star game. I don't know if they were able to have if they had a tier 2 or a tier 3 or 4,
Hmm.
uh, what that would look like. I mean, that's a thought.
Yeah. What if
Um,
they went down to like a 3-inning game? Could you have a reduced lineup if you had like maybe 10 batters and 4 pitchers per team, and you went 3 innings? After the second inning, it's sudden death, let's say.
Maybe I think the purists would probably
Yeah, it's not even baseball at that point, eh?
yeah, I think conventional wisdom would probably argue hard against that. But they
Mhm.
do have, as the fan experience, the home run derby,
Yes.
right? That's always a huge attraction, and so is the slam dunk contest, right? So
Right.
I
But
guess
in these past years, the 3-point competition and the slam dunk competition have really waned.
yeah,
People
I've
have
noticed
talked
that.
about how it's not exciting anymore, and none of the biggest players enter for the for the slam dunk competition. Excuse me. The 3-point
Mhm.
competition is still exciting, but I don't know. I feel like that's lost a lot of its a
Mhm.
lot of its lust that people used to look at the 3-point contest with. So
Yeah.
I do feel like the NBA might even scrap that part of it or make it
Mhm.
more of like a celebrity event.
Right.
Whereas this little tournament that they found, this is what might get the viewership, right?
Yeah. Cool.
Mhm.
All right. Well, that's a good segue, I think, to talk about the playoff structure. So
Mhm.
there's the length of the season, and I mentioned briefly that MLB now starts in March, right? Which was unheard of growing up. It was always the second week of April, normally
Yeah.
around April 7th,
Yeah.
April 8th. And
Hmm.
then the World Series at the end of the season would always be in October. I mean, Reggie Jackson, his nickname
Hmm.
was Mr. October,
Next October, yeah.
right? And but now it's extending well into November. But that's with all sports. I mean, the NHL, they're playing the Stanley Cup in June, right? They're entering
Right.
into June.
Right.
So just crazy long seasons. So, and I think that's mainly because of the playoff structure. So the question is, like, are there too many teams being let in? And are there too many rounds? I know in MLB, they've got the wild card round, which is a best, that's just a 2 out of 3, best 2 of 3. So a team can easily get knocked out in 2 games right after making it to the playoffs.
Right.
And then the divisional round, which is best 3 out of 5,
Hmm.
which the division winner is obligated to play. So a team can, like the Yankees, for example, in years past, or the Dodgers, who would win well in excess of 100 games, would risk being taken out in 3 games, right? In the best 3 of 5. So that's
Hmm.
during the divisional round. And then in the championship series, that's 7 games. So that's what you would consider, I guess, a regular playoff format. And then, of course, the World Series is 7 games.
Hmm.
But all told, that's a lot of playoff games. And do we really need that wild card addition? I mean, it's been there since I think 97, 98. So they're not going to go back on it now.
Hmm.
Um, but are the best teams really given a fair shake? Maybe not. I mean,
Hmm.
maybe that divisional series should be 7 games, and then the wild card just becomes 1 game, similar to what a play-in is now with the NBA. because at
Right.
least with the play-in, you know, those teams on the lower end of potentially making into the playoffs, they've got a chance, right? They've got a shot.
Or you mean in the NBA, the teams that get in the lower round have a
In the
chance?
player, yeah, in the play-in, their fan base at least has something to root for. Are
Right.
they going to go deep into the playoffs? Probably not in the
Yeah.
NBA.
Hmm.
But in MLB, a wild card team, if they're on a hot streak and they ride a couple of hot pitchers, they could go all the way. I mean, that has
Absolutely.
happened in 2023. The Texas Rangers,
Hmm.
I believe, they got in the wild card,
Well,
and I
and
think
then didn't they
the
play
Florida Marlins,
Arizona? Didn't they play the Diamondbacks or something like that? Where
the
the
D-backs went to
Diamondbacks,
the World Series, and they were
yeah,
also a wild card team.
yeah, and they didn't look
And
very good, right?
yeah, and the Marlins have, I think,
Done
won
it twice.
World Series
Yeah, I
in the
think the
early
Marlins have done it
2000s.
twice, if I'm
They
not
have done it
mistaken.
twice. They
Yeah,
have done
Josh
it twice.
Beckett, and then way back in the day against Cleveland, I remember
In
watching that.
'97 they did it, and that was
Yeah.
I think in the years of the inception of the wild card format, and they
Yes.
benefited from that because they went all the way and won the World
Yes.
Series.
Good old Kevin Brown and the Arm of Steel.
Well, they
Um,
had a stacked team. They had Gary Sheffield on that team.
yeah. Yeah.
Cliff Floyd was on that team. I think Jeff Conine. That Marlins
Yes.
team was no joke. They were
Yes.
good,
Yes.
but there were other teams who were, well surpassed them during the regular season. So
Right. Well, I had
I'm sure that fan base felt like they got kind of jobbed when that system came into play, right?
Right. I remember that series closely because I had put a lot of money on Cleveland and I was too young to do so. So it's part of the reason why I don't gamble to this day was that series. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, you were saying it's less likely in the NBA. I find in MLB, like you said, it's very, very likely that a team that wins 104 games loses in the first round to,
Yeah.
they're having some pitching issues. The bats go cold, whatever it is. It's very common in baseball. In the top of my memory, Doug, I think the Houston Rockets won being a 5th or 6th seed in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Dallas Mavericks in 2011 won by being a 4th seed, 5th seed. I can't remember exactly, but they weren't a 1st or a 2nd seed. And then, of course, I think we had Indiana last year that was a 4th seed that made it.
But that's conceivable though. A 4 or 5 seed, that's not totally out of the question.
But see, like I said, those 3 teams, that's the past 30 years, right?
Okay.
So the percentage of that, it's like you said, generally in the NBA, we see one of the top 3 seeds that make it to the final.
Mm-hmm.
So to be honest with you, as a purist, when I watch NBA playoffs right now, I don't have a problem with NBA playoffs. I find it very exciting and compelling, and I can tune in every game. And even with the new wild card format that they have with the play-in, I don't find that to make it too much. I find that my attention is still there. One thing about MLB, and I'll ask you, is that growing up, I always thought that the 2 teams coming out for the pennant, for the AL, and then 2 teams for the National League, I always thought that was crazy. And I hated that a really, really good team. I remember one year when the Jays went in the 90s. I think it was the Chicago White Sox had a crazy year, and I think they were 1 game behind the Athletics or something like that. And that was ridiculous for me. I thought, man, the fact that this Chicago team did not make it into the playoffs or not get rewarded for having this great season was wild. So I always thought MLB needed to sort of add some. And I didn't think I had a problem with all this play-in and the wild card and them adding teams. But as you mentioned, now that I think about it, wow, we're starting early. And yes, we're definitely ending late in MLB. So yeah, what's your thoughts on that as a lifelong fan?
Well, I mean, back in the day when the 2 teams came out of either league, I always thought that I thought the same thing. Like, I mean, the AL East was stacked with teams, and then the NL West was clearly the inferior division, right? I remember in 1985 when the Kansas City Royals won the World Series, and they got into the playoffs with 87 wins, and they ended up beating the Jays in 7 games in the ALCS. And I thought to myself, man, if they were in the AL East, they wouldn't have even made the playoffs, right? They would have been in like 4th place.
Yeah.
So this Royals team that just came out of the West went all the way, and they got hot in the playoffs, and they won.
But they won it all that year, right?
They did win it all that year. Yep.
Yeah.
They won in 1985. George Brett Saberhagen, a legendary team. They were a great team, but had they been in the AL East, they would not have made the playoffs at all. So I always thought that they should reward the two best teams back then, or even, the four best teams. And in that particular example, the Kansas City Royals would not have made the playoffs, yet they went all the way and won the World Series. So, I mean, I always supported a playoff format that included more teams, that rewarded the better records. And they kind of have that now, but there's still teams that sneak in as a division winner, right? Like the AL Central was clearly the weakest division in the league last year, arguably in all of MLB. But that division winner, by winning the division, they got into the playoffs. They didn't have to play a wild card round. They went right to the divisional round, right?
So if you were in charge of things, what would you tweak to sort of adjust that?
Well, I would tweak it based on record. And even though if a team wins the division and they have the lowest record of all the teams going into the playoffs, I would say that team has to play the best 2 out of 3. Or those two teams have to play the best 2 out of 3.
So you would keep the division just for schedule, but then coming into playoffs, it's conference only. You would not separate into division. Is that what you're recommending?
Yeah, essentially. Like the division winner would still get in to the playoffs, but the division winner would not get that wild card round bye. Like as it stands right now,
yes,
the division winner does not have to play that best 2 out of 3 series, right? They go right to the division round.
Right. Okay.
Regardless of their record.
Okay, but would that shorten? Would that solve your problem of the season being too long? Would it shorten the schedule at all if you did that?
No, I don't think it would impact the schedule, unfortunately. In terms of impacting the schedule and shortening things, I don't think it's going to happen, man. I just think they're too far gone now, and it is what it is.
Right.
So the next step is what we've alluded to today on Keeping Receipts, which is making the regular season more interesting and more of a fan experience somehow. So I think we brainstormed some pretty good solutions here. The question is, when is MLB going to act on that and potentially use the NBA as a template for something like an early season tournament? I would like to see that. And I think we kind of strategized here today and hopefully come up with some pretty good ideas.
Well,
so yeah,
it's a little bit of an apples to oranges comparison, but apples and oranges are still both fruits, right? So
yeah, I mean, it's still a template. The NBA is doing something about it, right? There were complaints, they had to address it, and they did something. And now we're seeing load management and we're seeing the fan experience kind of being taken away in the early months of the season. It's not what it used to be, right? So NBA's got to step up, or MLB rather has to step up and do something about that and make the games more meaningful in the early stages of the season.
Right.
So anyway, anything more to add before we sign off today?
Nope. Just tell everyone at home where they can find your good work. A couple of the articles you put out the last little while have been really, really worthwhile reads. So I think
thanks, buddy. I appreciate that.
I would just like to give a shout out to you over at the Slam and everyone working there. You guys do good work, and definitely worthwhile reads. So I would recommend to everyone to check those out.
Yeah, so the Slam QR code is up there in the corner. You can zoom in on that. Otherwise, I also post on Anubis Sports and on Stadium Rant, so you can check those out as well. I'm going to take this recording and put it over on YouTube. So if you want to check out Keeping Receipts YouTube channel and like and subscribe us, that would definitely help. And Chris and I hope to tune in again, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And if you have any topics that you'd like for us to address, then feel free to drop that in the comments as well. All right.
So
Doug. For Chris, this is Doug signing off. We'll see you guys next time.
Take care.